Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:07 now on this Monday morning, and a busy one at that. But that's not going to sway us. We're not going to shrink to the challenge. We're rising to it. Coming up at 8:05, Casey Crosby, RNC co-chair, find out how excited they are to breathe some funding into that Win Some Sears for Governor, Get Out the Vote project, right? Right. 8:35, Maryland delegate Mark Fisher. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock, I believe is your name, isn't it?
That's right. Good morning.
You look familiar to me. Honestly, I'm tempted to just say Joe diGenova, John Bolton, go. But I do have specific questions for you, Joe. Joe diGenova joins us now. Good morning, Joe. Joe?
I'm here.
There you are.
There he is.
I got to suspect, Joe, as you watched the events unfold Friday morning at John Bolton's home in Bethesda, right, very close to the radio station here.
Yes.
For a man like you, someone who's been in D.C. and worked in law, former U.S. attorney, and just you've seen it all. It must drive you nuts to watch the people on cable news speculate, pontificate, and talk about legal actions like this when the FBI goes into somebody's home to look for evidence, especially considering you had to deal with a similar raid in your own home under the Biden administration.
That is correct. That is correct. Well, what's interesting about this is it's being reported that this has something to do with the book, which was published many, many years ago. Well, it may very well have something to do with the book, but in order to get a search warrant, you have to have fresh information about something new to get a search warrant. You cannot use what the courts call stale facts to get a new search warrant. So what this shows us is that something has occurred within the recent period of time to justify a physical search of John Bolton's home and office. We don't know what that was that occurred. We can speculate. And one of the things we know is that these types of search warrants involving classified information frequently involve the use of FISA warrants. And it may not have been, for example, a FISA warrant on the person who searched, but it may have been a FISA warrant on somebody else, and the person whose search name came up. But we don't know that. All we know is that the search warrant occurred and that it required a federal magistrate judge to find probable cause that a crime had been committed and that instruments of that crime were to be located in those two places. That's all we know. It doesn't mean John Bolton committed a crime, and no one should assume that. But it does mean that there was reasonable cause to look for documents or objects or things or electronic devices which might contain information on them.
Joe, when will we know? I've seen on X this weekend some, pretty provocative statements. Oh, you guys people are going to regret ever defending Bolton, and oh, this is going to be explosive. But when will those facts come out?
Well, generally speaking, what happens next is an investigation through a grand jury. Grand juries are secret. You're not supposed to know what happens in front of grand juries, but there will be leaks, and the leaks will probably tell us what the direction of the grand jury is, what it's about, who's the subject of the grand jury, and things like that. But this is not a quick process. It's a slow process, although it's very apparent that the FBI has been working on this for some time and gathering their information. And it's clear from the public statements from the FBI Director Patel and the Deputy Director Dan Bongino, who are, interestingly enough, doing something very unusual. They're making tweets about ongoing matters. Or apparently related to ongoing matters, which I think is in a way designed to keep people aware that they haven't dropped the ball and that they're not letting things fall by the wayside. I think it's an effort to let people know that they haven't forgotten why they're there.
It sounds like, if I may, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, based on what you just said, that you would prefer, all things being equal in the best of possible worlds, that the director and the deputy director would not be tweeting anything about this ongoing situation.
Well, I think given the attitude of the American people and the press about all of this being about retribution, I think the lower the profile, the better. And as we used to say in the office, when I was U.S. Attorney. You don't speak to the public about cases. You speak through indictments, and you speak at sentencing. You're allowed to announce indictments, and you're allowed to talk about things that are happening at sentencing. But I do understand this, that I think the director has at his core the desire to let people know that this is not James Comey's FBI. This is not the old FBI of J. Edgar Hoover and others who were acting politically motivated. I think they're trying to establish a baseline that this is a law enforcement, legal and fact-based thing. And I think, my view is, try to keep that stuff to a minimum.
But let's be clear, if we can just reiterate some of the important analysis you just gave us. Number one, this isn't just a resumption of the case that had been investigated and then thrown out by Merrick Garland. They just dropped the case, they decided, for whatever reason. There had to be something new to bring on this new search warrant. And, by the way, it could be related to some other individual that they're actually investigating, that they actually think is potentially guilty of criminal behavior. And they're merely looking for evidence for that criminal investigation at Mr. Bolton's residence. Am I understanding that?
That's exactly right, and I'll give you an example of that. When the search warrants were executed in 2021 for Rudy Giuliani's home and office, and several other former U.S. attorneys, one in Arkansas and elsewhere, and then at our house in Chevy Chase in Kenwood, we were told, Victoria was told, that she was not the target of the investigation, but that she had communicated with people who were, and that they needed her devices. Yeah. And so it's very obvious that people can be swept up in these investigations who are perfectly innocent because someone else is being investigated. And that may very well be the case with John Bolton.
And thank you for clarifying that, because I think it's important for everyone to realize that when the lawfare investigations were engaged at the end of the Trump administration and during the Biden administration, people like you and your wife got swept up in this. It's still a harrowing experience to have the FBI come knocking on your door, demanding you to go through your private papers, your private devices, et cetera, et cetera. Which brings me to an obvious question. What do you make of all of the people who immediately, like from the moment this started Friday morning, they were screaming, "This is outrageous. Two wrongs don't make a right. This is retribution. This is retaliation. This is the use of the law as a weapon." You must have been somewhat amused, if not outraged, at the same time.
Well, I think what's perfectly clear is that the people who say things like that are the useful idiots of the left. They're truly corrupt intellectually. Nobody with a brain can say anything like that with a straight face. The truth is that when the Southern District of New York executed those various search warrants at our house and Rudy Giuliani's office and other former federal senior government officials at their houses at the same time on the same day, and then nothing comes of it. Remember, those search warrants were executed, and then eventually the case was dropped about 18 months later, saying that no case would be brought. What is clear what was going on was that, and here's the corruption of that. The Southern District of New York was running defense for the Biden family. They were trying to prevent any information about the Biden corruption in Ukraine from becoming public. And we now know, as a result of all the releases by John Solomon, that the FBI and the DOJ were involved in a corrupt, and I mean criminally corrupt, effort to protect the Biden family and Hillary Clinton. And so the notion that by accident they execute simultaneous search warrants at multiple places because they feared that people that they were searching had information about the Bidens in Ukraine, to think that that was serious and sincere is BS.
All right, Joe, stay with us, Joe. We got more to talk to you about, including you mentioned John Solomon. He's got some revelations about James Comey and some leaks that occurred and some other things. And we want your take on the D.C. crime situation as well now, almost 2 weeks into the federal cooperation over law enforcement, and things seem to be going pretty well. So we'll continue with Joe diGenova in a moment. First, though, at 7:15, WMAL.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
We are almost 2 weeks into President Trump's crackdown on crime in Washington, D.C., the use of federal law enforcement to cooperate with Metropolitan Police Department. and things seem to be going pretty well. All the crime statistics are down, including carjackings and homicides. In fact, we've gone now, I believe, 10, possibly 11 days without a homicide. We'll get you the updated number there. Joe diGenova, what happens at the end of this 30-day window? How can this continue? Can it continue? And what's sort of next here, as clearly it seems to be a success so far?
Well, Larry, it's clearly a stunning success. When you realize that all of the crime statistics from the District of Columbia are completely unreliable and fake. This has been a problem for major metropolitan police departments all over the country for years, mostly Democratic cities where they try to play down crime in order to make themselves look good. D.C. is no different. Bowser and others are simply lying about the facts. They have dumbed down all of the police statistics. We all know from public reporting that crime is much worse than they indicate. And the fact that certain types of crimes have simply disappeared as a result of flooding the zone by the federal government is proof positive that crime is afoot. And by the way, your instinct that this crime is now going to move to PG County is right on the money, because that's just what's going to happen. These criminals are smart. They are not dumb. They know what's going on. That's why they left the zone. The zone was flooded. And as far as, ongoing stuff, will it continue? It should. It should continue for at least another 60 to 90 days. Now, that requires, under the Home Rule Act, which should be amended to make it as long as the president wants it, not as long as Congress decided it should last. Congress is not designed to run anything. They shouldn't be putting limits on executive authority. So the president is either going to get the consent of Mayor Bowser to extend it, which he will not give, or Congress is going to have to extend it. Otherwise, the president can leave the guard on the ground without the consent of the mayor, even if he's no longer running the police department. And then it'll be up to the mayor and who's ever running the National Guard for the federal government to decide how to cooperate. So we don't know what's going to happen yet, but it's going to be very interesting.
Joe, there's been some videos of arrests on D.C. streets, and while people have the right to voice their anger at these arrests, I've seen some pedestrians and observers actually get physical with some of these law enforcement officials, and there doesn't seem to be any arrests of those people. It might be just trying to de-escalate or just trying to get out of there as quickly as possible, but is that allowed for an individual to interfere with an arrest of someone on the street? Because again, these videos are pretty common on social media.
No, it is not allowed. And there's a reason for that. When a law enforcement official is making arrest, they are trying to subdue a defendant. Their gun is in their holster. Yep. While they're dealing with a defendant, someone who reaches in could take their gun and hurt them or kill someone or shoot an officer. If I were the United States attorney and anyone touched a police officer during any of these arrests, they would be locked up immediately. We would have a special group of assistants to deal with them. I'm sure Janine Perot is dealing with this. She's a very smart person. She's very tough. I'm sure they're trying to figure out a way to do two things: de-escalate and take into custody people who are serious threats. But make no mistake about it, when you allow the touching of an officer during an arrest, that is a crime. And it is dangerous because it encourages others to reach in and create a mob scene around an arresting officer. We've seen this in New York, where police officers were beaten by groups of thugs. If you let this get out of control when the arrests are being made, you're going to have a worse situation. And then you know what's going to happen? Officers are going to pull their weapon. They're going to shoot people.
Yeah.
Yep.
God forbid. Joe, real fast, we've learned from John Solomon's Just the News that there's now another declassified series of memos and testimony related to leaks that were given to, I know you'll be shocked that there were leaks coming out of the FBI, disclosed information given to the New York Times in October 2016. Now, that's before the presidential election. And according to then FBI General Counsel James Baker, he testified that he thought he was acting on Comey's direct instructions through his chief of staff, James Rybicki. What do you make of these revelations and a couple of other revelations that continue to sort of make James Comey look like a real dirty player in this whole thing?
But what I make of this is grave disappointment in the people who reviewed this evidence and decided to do nothing about it. And that happened during the Trump Justice Department. Much of this was reviewed by Trump DOJ people after Trump became president, and nothing was done about it. I must tell you, I am so nauseated by the weak-kneed approach to the FBI by the Trump First Justice Department. It's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. This conduct by Comey and Rybicki and Baker created the beginning of the conspiracy against Donald Trump to deny him the office of the presidency, and then after he became president, to get him impeached. Make no mistake about it. The impeachment, the first impeachment of Donald Trump, was a direct result of the false flag operation involving the Russia hoax, and it needs to be investigated brand new from the start, starting in 2016. There is no doubt that crimes were committed against the president and the incoming president of the United States.
Joe diGenova, we have to leave it there, but a firecracker as usual this Monday. Thanks for joining us, and our best to your lovely wife, Victoria Tonsing, who's been very active on X. I suggest everybody follow her. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, guys.
It is 7:23.
Making sense of your world.
I don't know where to begin.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Thanks for taking my call.
Making sense of the news.